Welcome in this new video of the House of Asian Cinema. Video slightly different from the usual because I'm going to advise you several books to put under your Christmas tree. All these books are recent books which I have read, and so I'm able to advise you. I must confess, all of them are about Hong Kong cinema. I would have liked to have a wider range and discuss about some other cinematography and some other culture, but that won't be the case in this video, maybe in another one in the future. But anyway, I hope you will find it interesting and potentially you will buy some of those books in order for you to have a pleasant Christmas. I'm going to start with Police versus Syndicat du Crime. Oh no, sorry, that's a mistake. That's my book. It's not recent. It's not even in English. So I'm not sure I can advise it to you. But anyway, if you are curious about it, if you are able to read French, you can still buy it. Otherwise, you have to pressure some of the publisher in English for them to do a translation. That can be done. I mean, I know my publisher won't be against it if an agreement can be found. So anyway, sorry for this self-promotion, this shameless self-promotion. I'm not going to bother you anymore with the book, but I will still have it in the background in order to have some kind of subliminal effect. And hopefully some of you will buy it anyway. But anyway, I finish with this shameless self-promotion, and I go with the first book which I want to advise you. And this book is Bruce Lee, A Life by Matthew Polly. So it's a recent biography on Bruce Lee. There have been a lot of books about Bruce Lee, but I personally think many of them were not very good, were quite superficial, and I think this one has become the reference when it comes to Bruce Lee biography. It's not endorsed by the Bruce Lee Foundation, and that's probably a good thing. Matthew Polly has done the biography the right way, which means he has not just compiled informations left and right from magazines and stuff. He hasn't done the lazy job of just repeating what has already been done. He has moved his ass to different locations. He has interviewed a lot of people who have met Bruce Lee, who have worked with him, who have known him personally, and he has been able to really recreate in details the life of Bruce Lee. I think it's especially interesting when it delves into his childhood. His childhood is his small childhood, but also the time he was in college and high school, because there are a lot of simplification when it comes to this period of his life, and everybody tend to work as an echo chamber, repeating the same information without being sure of its reality. And I think Matthew Polly does a very good job in trying to find the truth out of these gossips, allegations, and we have a clearer view of what kind of child Bruce Lee was back then. And he keeps doing a good job throughout the book, really going deeply into the details of Bruce Lee's life. When he moved to the US, when he opened his school, his relationship with his wife. So all these subjects are treated very well. He also goes into some more controversial subject, like the duel with Wong Jackman, which is a very touchy issue. And even if we can't say for sure that the way he describes it happening has been the real way, I still think that that's probably the closest to the truth we will ever be. He also proposed a theory behind the death of Bruce Lee, which is different from many of the other theory we have heard about it, and I mean, many of them were completely bogus and stupid, but this one, in my opinion, makes sense. He doesn't present it as the universal truth. I mean, that's an hypothesis, that's a theory. But still, it's a credible one and it's an interesting one. So it's a really, really good book about Bruce Lee. If I have one complaint, it's a very small one. I think the chapter when Bruce Lee comes back to Hong Kong and becomes the Kung Fu star we know, that's probably the weakest of all. But it may be because the people Matthew Polly has interviewed for these chapters, I've also interviewed them, and so there was less new information for me when I read these chapters, and actually I even have some story which were not present in the book. So in my opinion, that's maybe the weakest link of the book, but that's still a pretty solid weakest link. That's still pretty good. And if you are not that familiar with Bruce Lee, meaning you only know him through the 4 Kung Fu films he has done when he came back to Hong Kong, that will be very useful for you. You will really learn a lot of things, and you will have a better consideration and, in my opinion, better appreciation of Bruce Lee, the man and the myth. So it's really a warm recommendation. I don't think, it seems unlikely that there will be a better biography about Bruce Lee than this one. So don't hesitate to buy it if you are a fan of Bruce Lee, if you are a fan of Hong Kong cinema. I think that's a must-have for any of you. Bruce Lee Alive by Matthew Polly. The next book is on it's another biography of a famous Kung Fu star, but a Kung Fu star which unfortunately didn't have the same cultural impact as Bruce Lee, even if he has his fans. And that's a biography of the Chinatown Kid, Alexander Fu Sheng, by Terence Brady. Terence Brady has to be really commended for writing a biography in English about Fu Sheng, because even if Fu Sheng was a star in the 70s, early 80s, and even if he has still to this day some kind of cult status, and I mean some fans who are very loyal and very devoted to him, for the most part I would say he has been forgotten. He's not the kind of actors, of Kung Fu actors, you will hear that much about. And even nowadays in Hong Kong, even if his name is known and if you ask about him in the street, people will be familiar with him, but I'm not sure most of them will be able to tell you what movie he has done exactly, or have even seen some of his films. So this book is really, once again, it's going to be the reference on the subject, for the simple reason that I don't think anybody else will have the courage to write a biography of Alexander Fu Sheng. So by lack of competition alone, this book is the reference on the subject. And it's a good book, it's a good biography. You have everything you need to know about Fu Sheng. Terence Brady has done a good job. He really goes about all the important steps in the life and the career of Fu Sheng. He talks about the background of his family, his education, how he got into the Shaw Brothers, his collaboration with Chiang Chai. So all the important subjects are being treated in this book. Of course, his relationship with Jenny Tseng, who was one of the biggest singer of the time, and also, of course, his untimely death, his accident in 1983. So that's a good biography, and once again, I really commend Terence Brady for having written it. If I go into the complaint section, I think the book managed to get every important step in the career and in the life of Fu Sheng, but sometimes it lacks a bit of detail, in my opinion. When it talks about the most important films made by Fu Sheng, like for example Disciples of Shaolin, or a few others who are quite important films in his career and who are quite major Hong Kong cinema achievements, I would have liked him to go a bit deeper about their production, about the difficulty they faced, the context in which they were produced. Sometimes I think he it doesn't delve deep enough, or at least as deep as I would have liked him to do. In a way, I guess that's a good sign. I mean, when you want to read more, it means the author has done a good job. He has made you interested in the subject. But still, I would have appreciated if he had been able to go a bit deeper sometimes in the production of some of the films which he talks about. On the second very small complaint, it's that when it comes to the critical appreciation of the films he's talking about, he often quotes people reviews from the internet. So I guess those quotes are illustrating what he thinks himself of those films. But I would have liked him to commit a bit more on that, and to really give his own opinion on why those films are so good, why they are so important, and to really put a bit more of his personal opinion about the films he talk about, which he doesn't really do, and I think that would have been a nice personal touch. Once again, those two complaints are very small, minor complaints. The book is still a reference on the subject, and once again, it's a very good thing it exists. So if you are interested in Alexander Fucheng, of course, that's a must-buy. If you are very into Shaw Brothers, that's also a must, because Fucheng's career has been from start to the end in Shaw Brothers, so you have a lot of insight, a lot of information about how those films were produced, and some other subject, some other issue which they had to deal with, like contract disputes, these kind of things, and that's interesting to know if you are interested in Shaw Brothers. If you are into Hong Kong cinema in general, I think that's also recommended. That will depend mostly if you are interested about Fucheng and the Shaw Brothers, in my opinion. So it's maybe less recommended if you are just a general Hong Kong cinema fan, but still, I would still advise you to buy it and to read it, because that's an important part of Hong Kong cinema, and because Fucheng was an interesting actor with an interesting trajectory. So recommended. Biography of the Chinatown Kid, Alexander Fucheng, by Terence Brady. And the last book I'm going to advise you is another biography. It's a biography of Jackie Chan, Never Grow Up, which was written by Zhu Mu. It's an official book, official biography. It's the second time Jackie Chan has published a biography. There was a first one called I Am Jackie Chan, which, if my memory serves me well, was written by Steve Young. And so that's the second one. This book is a mixed bag. I would still advise you to read it if you are a Jackie Chan fan, but I think you have to be aware of its weaknesses. Its strong points, in my opinion, are when it comes to the childhood of Jackie Chan and his difficulties when he was a stuntman, when he was trying to make his place in the Hong Kong film industry. I think he's very candid, he's very honest about the difficulty he had to face, the disappointment he had, all the doubt he had. I think that's all this part is very touching. Of course, the very tough training he had at the Beijing Opera Academy under Sifu Yu Jim Yun. So all these things are very interesting to read and very touching. He's also quite honest about the way he was when he became a star, the way he treats some people, and especially the woman he had affairs with, the woman he was involved with. All this part is pretty nice, pretty good to read, and quite touching, really. Having said that, the book is far from perfect, and one of the reasons, in my opinion, is that while Jackie Chan can be very candid and very honest on some aspects, he is not on some others. So he's basically very selective in the things he wants to talk about. So while it's quite touching in a way to see that he admits that he didn't treat someone like Teresa Teng well, that he didn't take care of his family as well as he should have been, he's not really dealing with some of the issue we know he have, some of the mistress he had, some of the children he had without outside of his marriage. I think as he opened up the door about some of those stories, I think he should have gone the whole way on also talk about it. I understand that's not easy, but in this case he should not have started, because that's most of the book is about this kind of personal feelings, personal stories, intimate relationships. So if you start going in this direction, at least you have to be fully honest, and I think it's not completely fully honest there, and so that's a bit disappointing in a certain way. The second point, which is problematic with this book, in my opinion, is that I don't know for you, but as far as I'm concerned, when I read a biography of a director or an actor, what I want to know is about the film they have made. If I'm interested in this actor or this director, it's because of his films, and I want to know more about the creative process, the difficulty that he had faced when he made them. That's the part I'm the most interested in, and that's why I buy such books. And unfortunately, this book is very shallow when it comes to that. It's very limited. There isn't much about the production and the creative process of the films we love so much. That's very unfortunate. You will have a couple of stories there and there, a few stories there and there about Project A and on some stunts, but there is really nothing new and nothing much on that, and for me that's a big problem. As I said, if I buy a biography of an actor or director I like, I want to know more about their works, and if they talk about their personal life, I'm fine with it, because that can be interesting and that can have an impact on the creative process as well, but I don't want it to be the main core of the book. I would prefer it the other way around, more about the films and less about the personal stories. So you have to be aware of that. I would still advise you to read it if you are into Jackie Chan and if you are into the golden age of Hong Kong cinema, but be aware that the book is not the ultimate, is not the reference, in my opinion, about Jackie Chan's life. I think the reference, the book, the ultimate biography of Jackie Chan is still to write, so hopefully that will happen one day. I think this book is one step in this direction, but there is still much more to do, in my opinion. Anyway, Never Grow Up by Zhu Mu, biography of Jackie Chan. That's it. These are the 3 books I advise you to have for your Christmas if you want to stay in this Hong Kong cinema atmosphere. If you find this kind of format interesting, if you like this kind of review of books, don't hesitate to let me know in the comment section. I can easily do that regularly and talk about some older books, and also with a wider array of subjects, not just about Hong Kong cinema, but some other filmography, some other cinematography. I will do that with pleasure. Until then, I wish you a very good Christmas, and I will see you very soon on the House of Asian Cinema.